But I remember doing that episode and other ones previous to it where people were getting on me like crazy. I mean, calling me an idiot. Sonny would have a good game, and they would pop back in old shorts that I had done about Arvell and how this didn't age well. I said, it'll age fine. Wait till you see him. And here he is now. So I want it all. Now, tell me now how stupid I am. Well, hey, it's Juck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Yeah, welcome back to the show. My good buddy Dylan Davis from the Delaware Gazette to wrap up, put a little bow on the Ohio State-Texas game together as we always do. Dill, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, fantastic. I think everybody in Buckeye Nation is doing fantastic on a night like this. For one, just happy to see college football back. Obviously, everybody's celebrating that. And for the Buckeyes to be coming off just a tremendous win heading into week 2, just doing fantastic. So I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. What a game. What an absolute scene and spectacle at Ohio Stadium. I've been there a lot of times. You've been there more than anybody I know. Obviously, you were in the press box, and I know that takes away from a little bit of your experience when you're down in the stands.
Sure.
But what did you where do you rate that atmosphere and that environment compared to big-time games?
Well, I was actually down on the field for the last 2 drives Texas had, so I actually got a very good idea of what atmosphere truly was like. So I did have that. I've had people talk to me about this, people who were there who said, like, man, that place was insane. What did you think? As people who know that I've been there, so often. And I, basically what I've told everybody is, as somebody who's been there for pretty much every big game that stadium's seen for the last 30 years, it was a top 5 atmosphere, man. It was, and there are different criteria. I've heard the shoe louder for like certain moments, like just isolated moments. I've heard the shoe louder than I heard it, but consistently from pregame to when the Buckeyes took the field to when CJ put that pressure on Arch and Ohio State got that final stop. That consistency, that's a top 5 atmosphere I've ever heard in Ohio State, in Ohio Stadium from Buckeye fans, and that's. That's pretty special when you think about all the moments that have come through that stadium. But I truly believe, and again, I've never said something that I don't truly believe, and I mean that. As somebody who's been in that stadium for the biggest games that place has ever seen for the last 30 years, that was a top 5 atmosphere from start to finish that I've heard from Buckeye fans. So, man, Buckeye Nation showed out, just a tremendous showing. We've talked about this before. People who say Ohio Stadium's not loud. I agree that it's not as loud as it should be consistently. But when Ohio Stadium wants to be loud, that place is second to none in college football, and it was second to none in college football on Saturday.
It's very clear Texas felt that same way too. Tennessee felt it the game before. We've had back-to-back ridiculous environments at the shoe. I was happy to be at both, and I felt like those were honestly 2 of the most exciting atmospheres I've ever been a part of. Now, the fact that it was at big noon, it took away a little bit for me. There was a couple times where I was thinking during the game, like, man, if this was at night, the fireworks should have been popping louder, and the red screen that we had at Tennessee, it was just really cool. But all in all, embraced it. Everything was great, and I was really, really proud to be a part of it. Proud of the team. It just felt like I don't know, man. It felt like a very cathartic win to open up the season and a real head start on a season that's kind of like it just feels lucky to be able to start the season with such a big win in the bag already.
Look, the reality of that win was, and I know nobody was really doubting Ohio State's, playoff candidacy, but the reality is it almost felt like Ohio State they clinched their playoff spot, week 1 on Saturday in week 1. Yep, Ohio State's a playoff team just like that, because I don't think anybody believes Ohio State's going to go drop 3 games from here on out. And if they don't, they could drop 2 more games, and I know nobody wants to see that, obviously, but they could drop 2 more games. But with that win in the bag, they're a playoff team. So it just felt like Ohio State just clinched a playoff spot on Saturday, just ho-hum. And some people may hate that, the nature of the sport, and I get that, but that's the reality of it. That's the way I came away from the horseshoe on Saturday night, thinking it's like, Yep. Ohio State's a playoff team now. It's just a matter of how they're seated, where they're going or who's coming here, what that looks like. But just with one win on week one, they're a playoff team now.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about it. In addition to that, I think what we saw out of the defense, no chance that defense is losing 3 games in the regular season with this schedule. And I guess we'll start there with Matt Patricia. And I was talking on the Buckeye Huddle Primetime last night about Matt Patricia when the hire was made, the nastiness that was said about him, bringing up allegations from when he was 19 years old that were dismissed, the stuff about Detroit and what a monster he was. I mean, everybody is kind of glossing over this. It was a really rocky start, a very widely criticized hire. And there's honestly no way he could have acquitted Ryan Day better for that decision than what we just saw. That was a virtuoso performance.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people were talking about this yesterday, today, just in the aftermath of the game, but he schooled Steve Sarkisian, one of the best offensive minds in college football. And I know if you ask Matt Patricia candidly, he better school Steve Sarkisian because that's an NFL mind who's done it at the highest level of NFL football, and won Super Bowls that way. He better school him. But just in general, if you're talking about where Matt Patricia's at now, he just schooled one of the best offensive minds in college football, big time. And he was like Matt was asked about this after the game about some of the things that were said about him, and I understand that, and he downplayed it well. But at the end of the day, one of the things he said was a lot of those things that were being said about him were coming from people outside of the Ohio State fan base, and I'm sure there were still Buckeye fans who didn't like the hire or had something to say about this, but a lot of it was from Lions fans, who watched him fail as a head coach, and I made this comment on Twitter as well right after in the aftermath that good news about Matt Patricia coming to Ohio State and being the defense coordinator is he doesn't have to be a head coach. He's not a head coach in the NFL. He's coming to be the defense coordinator at Ohio State. It was always stupid to come, to hold him to that standard of what he was as a head coach in Detroit. And so we saw him now with an NFL mind, with NFL players who are still playing on the college stage. What that marriage is like, and man, was it really impressive. And if anybody still wants to pick apart, oh, it might have been this or that, just listen to Steve Sarkisian's comments after the game about the credit he gave the Ohio State defense and Matt Patricia for the way they were able to disguise things, and just truly confuse, a young quarterback in Arch, which, that's the goal. A lot of the talk coming into this is, was how, how these two quarterbacks would fare, and and how they would approach them and confuse these guys and things like that. They just absolutely just baffled Arch on a lot of occasions. But it wasn't just Arch; it was again Steve Sarkisian, who I think everybody who's paying attention to college football has a ton of respect for, and in his ability to coach football. So what else would you want from it? I'm not surprised by it. I was never a guy who ever questioned for a second that this would be something that would be very advantageous for Ohio State. I thought as Ohio State could do, I thought it was as good as they could do for the hire, given the circumstances, the way Jim Knowles left, and it was just validated and all that. And his mind with those players. I always wonder why people doubted that it would work, or that they hated the hire, other than they just thought he was a piece of shit human being. Which I didn't know Matt Patricia before then, so but whatever. But just in terms of coaching football. I was confident that he wasn't just going to come in here and just be a piece of shit and, just not work from in that case right from the start. And if that wasn't the case, then X's and O's wise with those players, it was going to be fine. And well, we're one game into it, but if you were a Matt Patricia naysayer, you sure look like a dumbass today.
So there was a lot. It felt like a lot about his personal life, which I think to be the personal stuff that the Detroit players were saying. But I feel like it was so funny when he got to Ohio State and you got the players talking about him, giving him hugs, and it's oh wow, you must feel silly now. But when we talk about Jim Knowles and Jim Knowles' defense, it was consistently what we heard from him for years was, I've got better players and I've got to get accustomed to not trying to schematically do so much. I can do less now because I've got these better players. And he took it that way, kind of dumbed things down for himself. And that was the way he elected to go about it. obviously it's more complicated to do a lot more different stuff.
Right.
And Matt Patricia just, obviously worked his butt off with these guys. And I felt like this was going to be a very different looking defense because of that buy-in on the relationship side. I thought that they would be, okay, go ahead, introduce a little more to the guys, see how they take it, introduce a little more, and that we would end up seeing a different looking defense about midway through the season. Didn't expect it for game one. That is a ton of trust to put in those guys to execute all that different stuff.
Well, without question, I think what you just said there is like really important, because for everything all the credit we want to give Matt Patricia, the fact that those players on the field were able to handle this from
Mm-hmm.
it says so much about from the guys on the field, and that shouldn't be overlooked. Is like, yes, obviously Matt Patricia is a wonderful defensive mind. Like, I don't think anybody question that, whether you like the person or not. I think everybody understands, like, the guy knows a ton of football. So that there's that element. But for Ohio State to be able to handle what he was doing and that much of what he was doing right away and be able to throw that on the field in week one against an excellent opponent, it's just really, really amazing. And I also want to say just one thing, because I've seen this a lot on Twitter. A lot of people are taking this opportunity to dunk on Jim Knowles. And look, I don't love the way Jim Knowles left Ohio State either, but like, Jim Knowles did well for himself and did well for Ohio State in his time there. I know it took a little bit to ramp up to it, but at the end of the day, that defense is, a large reason why they won a national championship last year. And so, I don't love the dunking on Jim Knowles. I don't love the way he left. When Penn State comes to Columbus in November, I'm not going to feel too bad about a lot of things that are said about Jim Knowles and lead up, and certainly maybe even in that stadium on that day. But don't love the dunking on Jim Knowles today, because I think he still did a really good job and did what he was brought to Ohio State to do, obviously last year. But at the end of the day, Ohio State fell into a really good situation, and once again, it's a lot of that's because of the players they have, that they were able to do that much this early.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I didn't do any dunking on Jim Knowles, though I do think this makes that matchup so much more exciting.
Sure.
And the fact of the question, could it be possible? And we kind of posed it, a couple of weeks ago, that Brian Day might have actually upgraded in this whole deal. And it sounded a little silly to say that. But, when you look at the NFL with the talent being so much closer from team 1 to team 32, these guys got to get an edge schematically. Like, that's what they are focused on nonstop. And you listen to Knowles in his own words. Like, I got the talent advantage almost every time on the field. I can dumb it down. Well, if you can get your guys to execute it and you got the mind to be able to do it, the things we saw out of the defense were so different. I mean, from Caden Curry at nose tackle, and Atkinson and Kenyatta on the edge, and Arvell spying, and then, the bear fronts with Arvell or Sonny on the edge. We had Caleb at the edge. We had Lorenzo was on the edge. You had McLean on the edge and then dropping back into coverage in the post. And that's not to say anything about the coverages, which were ever rotating after the snap. Like, that was just, I couldn't believe they pulled that all off. With all these, like, if you take a lot of risk doing that, you screw up doing that, like, you can get picked apart.
Yeah.
And people criticizing Ryan Day's offensive game plan and Hartline's offensive game plan, I think they knew right off the rip, these guys can't handle this. And they were going to put the offense in risk as much as they needed to. That's what I feel like they were going for, because I have heard a lot of criticism of the game plan being so conservative. Dillon, I think they would have ramped it up if they needed to, and they came out with the best possible scenario, keeping Julian confident. No mistakes were made, and they didn't even show anything. Like, they showed nothing offensively, and that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think very early on, obviously Julian was let down by some plays that weren't made as well. So, I mean, I think that offensive game plan was everything they needed it to be and everything they thought they would need it to be. And, so much about, game planning and play calling is feel of the game and feel of the moment, how things are going right now. I think you're right. Absolutely. Very early on, they realized, like, defensively, like, they're going to keep this, not only keep this game close, but, like, they're going to be dealing here. So, just go out and find a way to make a few plays and convert a few drives and get points on the board. And like, you're going to be in a really good spot there. So, and they were right about that. Now, look, obviously Texas had opportunities that they didn't connect on that, could have maybe made that game different, or certainly made it a lot more interesting, early on, and changed the way Ohio State approached that. But, when it comes to Julian, who am I to say, it's so interesting going into a game of that magnitude with that situation at quarterback. I can't even imagine what it's like trying to get that, quarterback prepared for a situation like that. But to see Julian's poise and patience, so, there's two words I kept on coming back to all day. And then even afterwards, poise and patience. And, I have to believe that if you ask Ryan what you wanted to see out of Julian Sain more than anything, obviously you want to see some throws, make some plays, win the game. Obviously he kept on coming back to just what expectations are for Julian. It's to win the game. And I get all that. But if you had to see anything out of your quarterback in that game, win or lose, that you'd want to see poise and you'd want to see patience. Just be patient within the game plan, patient within the offense, and be poised. Don't let, certain things, get you sped up or, make you force plays that aren't there. Just stay poised and patience. And like he did that to a T. And for a young quarterback in that situation, that's such a wonderful sign to see. And Ryan said this after the fact as well. He may be alluding to something different, but just talked about the signs that were there. That there were very good signs of what he saw there. And I think that's what I come away from saying, no matter if anybody didn't like the game plan or not, and maybe you thought it was bullshit, maybe you thought that, they should have opened it up more. Ryan even said that they probably could have put more on Julian. I get that. But no matter what you thought about it, they got away with it. They won the football game. And Ryan's telling you that there were very, very good signs, and they already thought coming into it that they probably could have put more on him. So whatever you think about it, maybe you're unhappy about it, fine, cool, whatever. They won the football game. They just beat the number one team in the country, and he's telling you that there's more they could put on him, and that there were very good signs of what they did put on him that says like Julian Sain's going to be fine. So if you don't like the game plan, fine, whatever, unless you're just a guy who just hates, or you're always one of those guys who criticizes coaching staffs, that's fine, whatever. But if you just didn't like the game plan, okay, fine. We could probably have a conversation, fine, whatever. But they won the football game, and Ryan Day's telling you that everything he saw out of his quarterback was very, very encouraging, and they probably could have saw more if they needed to. So I have no complaints there. Like I'm so excited about what's going to happen at the quarterback position for Ohio State moving forward.
Yeah, I am too, and I think I'm with you. Like even if you lost the game and you saw what you saw out of him, the way he was so like, let's say one of those balls gets tipped up, pick six. But you saw what you saw out of him, even in the post game, like this guy, like nothing seems to affect him. Yep. And that's just about the best trait you could have being a young quarterback, at Ohio State of all places. So that was great. But to the game plan stuff, I think that there's a difference, a big difference when, say, for instance, you and I are talking about Ohio State playing against a 28-point underdog Michigan State team, and we see issues. We're talking about those issues after a win because we're projecting forward. What's that going to look like against number one? Well, we just beat number one, so you don't need to project. That's it. That's the difference, right?
And that's sorry. I'm sorry. That's a very good point, because I even had this problem talking to people after the game as well. Like, we're talking about like, didn't love this or that. And then it always come back to, but like, look, we're grading this on the scale of like, that was a national championship football game. Like that could be the two teams that are playing for the national title on the biggest stage in sport in week one. So we're gauging this on that scale. Like it's impossible not to include that scale in and say like, everything you're saying is against potentially the other best team or one of the best teams in college football. So like, good news for Ohio State is they're not going to play a team of that caliber. They might not play a team of that caliber ever, again this season. And if they do, it's going to be, maybe a team or two. So like, yeah, like everything we're talking about is graded on that scale. And, I think that gets lost in the shuffle. Even sometimes when I was evaluating the game, I have to be like, but like I say all this stuff and like, but that was Texas. That was the number one team in the country. So like, but anyways, yeah.
Ohio State wanted all those players. Texas wanted all those players on Ohio State. Like it's the best of the best right there.
Yep. Saturday, despite you want to talk about that? Goodness gracious, man.
So let's get into the nitty gritty. So let's get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty on the Texas side of the ball. Obviously, Arch is getting totally crushed. I think that dude Maybe could have looked a little better after he's in his third year now.
Yeah.
But I do think he is going to be better. I think he is going to be a top quarterback in college football before it's all said and done this year. Possibly a little overrated coming into it. His offensive line didn't do him a ton of favors. Brandon Baker, who the Buckeyes missed big time in recruiting. That was a big one that everybody was really mad about. Yeah. Year 2, he earns the starting job at right tackle. That kid had a rough day, really rough day.
Yes, he did. Yeah. Brandon Baker, just probably about as big a nightmare as he could ever imagine going into that game. Like, I have nothing against Brandon Baker. He's a true sophomore. He's going to be a great player. First of all, he's probably going to be a day one NFL draft pick. I would venture to say that much. But that was about as bad a day as you could have for a guy who just earned a starting job. It was not.
And again, a lot of that was mental, and it shows you what the pressure can do. A lot of it was mental.
Yeah. Going into Arch real quick. I don't think there's any question. Look, there's been so much discourse on Arch Manning from the moment before that game even ended. From the first quarter of that game. I don't think there's any question that Arch Manning was quote unquote overrated coming into this game, and that's no fault of Arch Manning's whatsoever. I still think the world of Arch Manning. I think he's got a ton of talent. You saw in the last 2 drives of that game some flashes of what made Arch Manning the guy that that was so highly talented as well. But make no mistake about it as well, Arch Manning missed some throws there. It had nothing to do with anything Matt Patricia or that Ohio State defense did. Arch Manning just missed some throws, some big throws in that game as well. The Ryan Wingo throw on that last drive is a massive play that who knows what happens if he delivers that ball there. So obviously the Jermaine Matthews interception again as well, just a poor decision and a poor throw. And maybe not a poor decision, it was a poor throw. So Arch made some some plays there, or didn't make some plays there. It just was not good quarterbacking, and for whatever reason, I don't know what that was. But at the end of the day, I think the disappointment of Arch is a byproduct of. Well, we talked about this coming into the game. So many assumptions were being made about Arch Manning. So, we talked about who was going to win the game, or, the matchups we liked. And there were so many assumptions about Arch just based on what we thought, everybody thought he was just going to step into the recruit that he was. And, that's a tough spot to be in, in that environment. Yeah.
Some Buckeye fans concerned slightly with the run defense. I'm not. I think a lot of it was they rushed for 5 yards a carry, which again, that's fine. That's not great. But that was double what Ohio State rushed for essentially. I think a lot of it had to do with all the mixing parts and moving around here and there. And some things need tuned up. Some things need dialed in a little better, and that'll come with time. So I'm not worried about that. But when we flip it around to the other side of the ball, the Ohio State running game, and a lot of it due to the conservative game plan, they were running into an 8-man front a lot, and they were just taking their medicine and taking what they could get. What I did notice after the game, Ryan Day was asked about it, didn't seem too nearly as concerned about it as a lot of other people are.
No, not at all. And, my personal take, I don't really have a strong evaluation on it yet because, again, so much of that was dictated by just the flow of the game and what Ohio State was willing to do or willing not to do, and what Texas, knew was coming. I thought early on in those games, there were some times where running backs didn't make the plays that they could have made to make, the running game look better and rip off some bigger runs. I didn't think the right guard situation looked very good in the second half. It got better, in the first half. It got better in the second half. I know when Taker pretty much played exclusively in the second half, and he played better in the second half as well. But that was a position that didn't go well for Ohio State in the first half, and how much that had to do with it. We can break that down. But
so everybody understands, all the linemen that started played every snap except for right guard, where Tegra came out for 15 snaps. Ethan Onyanwa came in and replaced him for 15. Neither of them graded out good at all.
No.
And Ethan looked pretty poor on quite a few plays with some really high school level technique stuff that he was just not. It was bad, and I was surprised. I really was. This is a smart kid. Ivy League offers from everybody who wanted to come to Ohio State and sought Ohio State out. High-level talent, and he's just not getting basics.
Well, look, Ethan didn't play for almost, exclusively in the second half. I don't know if he played at all in the second half. It was very early on, and then it was Tager's show from there on. So that's obviously very indicative of the way Tyler Bowen saw that position going. That there were no rotations from that point on. I'm certainly not Tyler Bowen. I'm not an offensive line, evaluator, but just from my own eyes, what I saw, yeah, that was some pretty poor stuff out of Ethan Onyanwa. And again, Philip Daniels, he was fantastic. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Like Philip Daniels was probably one of the stars of the show at right tackle. So it's very easy to see why he went and won that job. And it might have had nothing to do with Ethan Onyanwa losing that job. It might have just been Philip Daniels all of a sudden just came into his own, because the way he looked on Saturday, it was very obvious why he won that job. But moving Ethan Onyanwa down to guard and trying to see if he can be a factor. And at that point, that was a very poor showing, in the first opportunity he had to do that. And again, Tager played better in the second half. So I hope, that's something, but I don't know if they had the situation that they think they hope they had, where they did last year with Austin to be able to rotate in a guard. We'll see. But with Tager playing almost exclusively in the second half, it seems to me like Tyler Bowen realized, like, yep, this is our best five. And look, I think it's a great luxury if you have that opportunity. But like I would prefer Ohio State to just nail down five that they feel great about and just go push dudes around in week after week and build on that. But we'll see. But I think that's probably where they're heading.
Yeah, I think so too. And to Phil Daniels' credit, man, wow. There was one play, Dylan, where he was anticipating the end slanting in. Mm-hmm. So he comes down because he anticipates him slanting in, and he doesn't. He goes straight. And Phil's out of position, and he reaches his right arm under the guy's armpit and is able to get up underneath him and move this big dude right in front of him. I was like, are you kidding me? And then he did it with attitude, ran to the pile. Like, we heard about all the fights he was getting in early on.
Right. Yeah.
This guy is like, that's a fan favorite. And when we look at him in Austin at tackle, these are guys that both have 3 years this year and 2 more years of eligibility. Who knows how long they end up staying? But this is honestly the best case scenario, that it was those two who won those jobs rather than a mercenary 1-year guy, and then he's off to the NFL. Let them get the experience if they beat him out. That's great. But yeah, you missed in the transfer portal on Onyanwa. There's no other way to sugarcoat it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that the book's closed on him, that there's nothing. There's nothing more.
Dill, he was supposed to be the starting left tackle, bro. That's a miss.
Look, I might be trying to be nice, but I'm just not going to. I'm not going to look at a guy after week 1 for a guy of that body type who, like you said, not even supposed to be but through half a camp was going to be the starting left tackle. So. For better or for worse, but he didn't get through half a camp being that guy, for no reason. So I'm not going to close the book on him just yet. I also don't think that just because he's not your left tackle now, and Philip Daniels has asserted himself as the right tackle. So let's try him at guard. He might not be a guard, and if and maybe he doesn't play as a result, but don't force him in. Don't force a square peg into a round hole because you're trying to get him on the field somehow. He might not be a guard, and he sure as hell didn't look like a guard on Saturday. So maybe he doesn't play in that sense, but I guess, through 4 quarters of football, if that's what you're going to get out of Ethan Onyanwa at guard, please never again.
I want to play a snippet of something, Dylan.
Arvell said last week that he hasn't really worked much at the will. It's mainly Mike. How difficult would it be to get him ready to play that position if you needed to, or is that just not an option that's on the table at this point?
No, it's not an option. I mean, with Arvell, he's on a structured course to greatness. So he's climbing that step by step.
So that was Dylan that asked Jim Knowles that question, and we'll ask Dylan what he was getting at behind that question. I think I know. I haven't talked to him yet about it, but we talked about, Arvell for a while now, and this has been coming, and it's been coming at rapid fire pace. I did a short. I remember when he was about to overtake, it looked like maybe Gabe Powers for that number 4 linebacker spot. And honestly, really after one game, he overtook CJ Hicks as the number 3 linebacker in the rotation. James Laurinaitis said that he would absolutely be playing the guy who was playing the best. That's the guy that would be playing on the field. And I sat here with Dillon after it was pretty clear that Arvell took over for CJ Hicks, and Dillon and I both complimented James Laurinaitis for doing exactly what he said he was going to do, because a lot of times that stuff's easier said than done. You still got to look that dude in the face who's been in the program 3 years like a CJ Hicks and say, sorry, bud, this guy's playing better. He's now jumping you. It sucks, but it's what it is. This is big boy football. And in 3 games, we have not just seen Arvell Reese kind of outperform Sonny Styles. He's all the way outperformed Sonny Styles. Now, going by what James Laurinaitis said, assuming he agrees, why would Sonny Styles be entrenched as the starter at this point? It's only been 3 games. It's not like we're talking about some 13, 14 game starter. Styles had 54 snaps against Marshall. Cody Simon had 42. Arvell Reese had 29. I don't understand why Sonny would be the established starter at this point. Arvell has played better all 3 games. Sonny made 4 tackles, missed 3 tackles in that game. He doesn't trigger anywhere near as fast as Arvell or Cody. He doesn't lay the wood like Arvell. He's not as gap sound as Arvell. He doesn't fill the gap as fast as Arvell. He doesn't explode through tackles as fast as Arvell. I'm a huge believer in Sonny Styles. Don't get me wrong. Been a huge fan since high school. One of my all-time favorite recruits. I've sung his praises all off season, all last year. Up until this point, James Laurinaitis has done exactly what he said he was going to do. Why are the goalposts now moving? So that is a conversation, one of many that Dillon and I had last year. And as much as you all know, I own it when I'm wrong. Dude, we had this locked in before anybody that this dude was absolutely special. And while I love the fact that Sonny has had all this time to foster this development on the field, and he has, and he looked elite as hell, and he just keeps getting better. He looks like the general out there. You won a national championship last year, so you can't say mistakes were made, right? Everything was perfect, right? Yeah. You win it all. That's it. Everything was perfect. But this was always Arvell. He was always this dude. He just needed more reps, and he didn't get them. But this is no surprise at all. He has always been this amazing football player, and everybody got to see that. But I remember doing that episode and other ones previous to it where people were getting on me like crazy. I mean, calling me an idiot. Sonny would have a good game, and they would pop back in old shorts that I had done about Arvell and how this didn't age well. I said, it'll age fine. Wait till you see him. And here he is now. So I want it all. Now, tell me now how stupid I am.
Well, and first of all, that was always about how high you or myself were on Arvell and not anything about Sonny Styles. Like we've always thought Sonny Styles is a great football player. We saw it on Saturday. Like he's a fantastic football player. Like this is probably a different conversation. This linebacker tandem is probably as good as we've seen at Ohio State in, I don't know. Again, that's a conversation for a different day. Bottom line being is like everything we talked about then, what we've always felt now is that it's more about Arvell and the player he's going to be. I said in the summer, I continue to say it. Obviously, I have no reason to be discouraged about it now that he's going to be an All-American this year. Like it's always been about Arvell and not Sonny. Like, so Sonny's a fantastic player. We saw it on Saturday. Like Arvell can do literally everything you want to do with the linebacker on the field. Everything. You can ask him to do anything you want him to do, and he can do it at a high level. And that's all you can ask for of a football player. And so, saying nothing of Sonny because Sonny was fantastic on Saturday. He's a fantastic football player, and those two guys together are as good as we've seen at Ohio State, and I don't know how long. Going back to last year was always about not, that Sonny's a bad football player. It's just that you've got a budding All-American waiting in the roster, just waiting in the wings just to give him an opportunity, and we're seeing it on Saturday. And goodness, was it a treat. I think that was probably everybody's number one takeaway coming from that football game was Arvell. Right. So, yeah. Right.
And now, and going into the game, that was what we thought too. Like he is about to introduce himself to the world. Yep. And there could not have been a better way. I mean, Dillon, he was smacking around the guards, the 313-pound guards, throwing them out of the way and then running like a safety after that. It was insane.
watching him stand offensive lineman up and just shed those guys and just go make a play or just run to the pursuit of the football.
Whoa.
I mean, my goodness, like that's just brought. Look, the conversation, I distinctly remember this. James Laurinaitis in camp talking about Arbel Reese, and he talked about him being a violent football player. It was violence at the point of attack and his ability to run. I'll be damned if you didn't see violence at the point of attack and his ability to run stand out time after time after time on Saturday for Arbel Reese. Like just shedding offensive linemen like it was nothing, and his ability to run to the football, which we already knew he was an insane athlete at that size. My goodness, it was just on display time and time again. People have tried to say, like, well, it was one football game and it was a great football game against a great opponent as well. But like, consistency is what wins the day, and what makes great football players. And I agree with that. But like, then I kind of to your point that clip that you just ran to set this up was like, it's not. I've seen it consistent. I've seen it enough. I saw it last year. Like I already knew this was coming. This is just validation here. Like again, I thought in July that he was going to be an All-American this year. The last time I talked to you, we were talking about linebackers and we were talking about Sonny, and I said, Sonny's a fantastic linebacker, but he's probably not the best linebacker on the team. And again, saying nothing of Sonny because I think he's a fantastic football player with a Sunday future, but. Arbel's an All-American. He might be the best linebacker in football. Guess what?
Yeah.
That guy on the other side for Texas, that everybody thought was the best linebacker in football. And I'm not saying he had a bad game or anything like that, but he wasn't the best linebacker on the field on Saturday. So
no, he wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't. And it just feels nice. I mean, it feels nice, man. It obviously feels nice to have that guy on the team we root for and love, but it feels nice to be vindicated because of all the shit we took last year for the same opinion. Yeah. Honestly, there were a lot of people who do what we do who gave me shit about that opinion passive aggressively when they were doing their takes about Sonny. So there you have it then. How about that? How about them apples? How you like them? I want to talk about another player. Go ahead. Jalen McClain, bro. Jalen McClain. He's the next that dude, man. He is the next that dude. That dude is giving me so much confidence that I think that obviously nobody's going to beat Caleb. He's a once every 20 years type guy. But all the things that Caleb has opened up the defense and shown them what they can do with a piece like that, and thinking, okay, when Caleb's gone, all that leaves with them, and you go back to, okay, you're just normal again. I actually think that having Jalen working with Guerreri, working with Caleb, his ability, what Guerreri has to say about him, his smarts, and seeing him now in just his first game in his second year at Ohio State, I think that there's going to be a lot of that he's going to be able to shoulder next year as a junior more than anybody thinks. And I think he's kind of destined for superstardom. I think he's going to be a high round draft pick. I think he's absolutely got everything it takes, including the mentality. And I actually did a show about him earlier, just because like I just want to document this right now. Like this dude, he is going to be that next guy who's going to be like, whoa. But Davison, a huge game for him, bro. How about that? The most panned guy on the roster last year.
Yeah.
And we also said this, but take away those penalties. That guy's awesome. It was always about the penalties, and we had people cheering for him to go to the NFL so Devin Sanchez could come play. Showed out, 10 tackles, crazy.
Take away those penalties, and he's a top 2 round draft pick in the NFL. So I mean, and I get those penalties have been a very real part of the story. So I get all of that, but at the kind of performance we saw on Saturday, if that's the IGB you're getting on a weekly basis, like that's a top 2 round draft pick in the NFL. So I mean, obviously, that was a tremendous thing to see. Going back to Jalen McClain real quick, the way they moved him around, different things he did on Saturday for, what he was doing, the level of, that he's at, like, or how young he is in his career still, is just amazing. Obviously, that's no coincidence that he's in the same room with Caleb Downs because, I know sometimes it kind of gets exhausting heaping praise on these same guys like the Jeremiahs and the Caleb Downs. Like, how much more can you say about these guys? Watching Caleb Downs do so much, and maybe he didn't have like the gaudy stat sheet and make a lot of the the big time actual plays, but just when you go back and watch the film and if you just watch number 2 on defense, snap after snap after snap and see how much he does. I go back to the last, I want to say, actually I think it was the last play of the game, or no, it was the 3rd and 5 before the final play of the game for Texas. It was a 3rd and 5. As a matter of fact, it was a Ryan Wingo drop when Arch just didn't deliver the football. But if you go back and watch that play, Devin Sanchez was on the field as a true freshman, which, you know, in and of itself, amazing. Like, you talk about by fire, you know, the amount of respect and trust they have in that guy, obviously, to put him on the field in those situations says a lot. But it appeared to me, and obviously I don't know the coverages, I don't know responsibilities, so I'm just kind of projecting a little bit here, but it looked like Devin Sanchez didn't really know what he was doing. He was up towards the line on a guy, and Caleb Downs was playing 10 yards behind, but they were communicating back and forth, and Devin Sanchez clearly didn't look like he knew what he was doing. And Caleb basically just switched positions with him and said, hey, you know, drop back, I'll take this position here. And I don't, you know, whatever their responsibilities were, it just seemed like, you know, Caleb was like, I need to do this here. You drop back here and take this position. And then obviously the play ended up happening like it did. But just things like that, it's just amazing that, you know, Caleb has that much command of the defense. And it's nothing new. It's nothing we don't know about. It's everything we've ever heard about Caleb Downs, really, from the time he got to Ohio State. And then it was, you know, it was kind of, we got confirmation game after game, you know, when we watched it. But it just, Saturday was really amazing to see play after play, how much he did, how much command he has in that defense, to you know, not just play his position at the highest level, whatever he's going to do on a given play. He can do everything physically. We know that. But just to watch him make sure everybody's in the right position. He's communicating. He's literally the quarterback of the defense. And you hear that so much, and it's kind of cliche, but he is truly a quarterback of the defense. He is literally calling everything out. He's telling everybody where they need to go, how they're rolling coverages, all these things. It's just amazing. On top of the fact that they ask him to do so many different things physically in that defense. It was just amazing for Caleb Downs. And again, to that point, you know, for Jalen McClain to have that guy to learn from, and to see how much they asked Jalen McClain to do, you know, in such a you know, really early spot in his career was just awesome. And, you know, obviously just says how much about the future of this Buckeye defense and some of the leaders that are going to be coming through there.
It's, you know, great when we get a guy who pops and is going to be that caliber of player that we never expected. I mean, he was bottom 5 of that recruiting class, and that's always so cool when you see that. Like, that's dude who's just total grit. Like, no, I'm not that. I'm better. I'm going to Ohio State. I'm going to show you. And Perry Eliano was, you know, damn near lost his job for bringing in McClain and Leroy Roker in that class. And we've heard a lot of good things about Roker too to this point.
Probably the 3rd safety in that room right now.
So
now, maybe 4th. I don't know. I was surprised Malik didn't play at all. I didn't think that there was a situation where he wouldn't play at all on Saturday. He didn't, you know, that's fine.
Do you think there's a potential he was dinged up and he was just not on the injury report? I mean, not a snap, man. That was wild.
Yeah, I don't believe that he was dinged up at all, to be honest with you. For whatever reason. But bottom line, to your point, Leroy's 4 on that. I mean, like, Leroy's very much in that 2 deep of safety. So yeah, it's the recruiting class that Perry had, you know, that, hey, it looks like a pretty decent hit there.
Yeah, looks like the dude knows how to evaluate, if nothing else. It just took a little while for everybody to see it. So shout out to Perry Eliano. Now, I've got one more thing I want to get to, but if you want to have some final words on the game, anything you did not get to share, go ahead and have at them now.
No, I mean, we touched on everything. I think, you know, Caleb was probably the last thing that I wanted to touch on. You know, my biggest takeaways, again, were probably a lot of things. It was Arbel. That was my biggest takeaway. I think it was a lot of people's. It was Phillip Daniels, because I didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to play at that level against those guys. I just didn't. And frankly, I thought he could have played lesser than that, and Ohio State still won the football game. So it was just like icing on the top. That he was that damn good. And that's really impressive. And then Caleb Downs really stood out to me again, because it was just remarkable. And Caleb Downs was more of like a second watch thing, because it's not something you see in real time. You have to really just go back and watch, you know, the game again and again to see how big of an impact he has pre-snap on every play. And so the communication and everything that rolls through him. So that was my biggest things. But, you know, just in terms of big picture for Ohio State, you know, going back to Julian, and just, again, that patience and that poise. You know, the big plays are going to come, and hearing Ryan Day talk about the fact that they could have put more on him and they just didn't feel like they needed to, or, you know, that they weren't going to, because they felt like they were going to ride a defense to a win there. If that's the kind of patience and poise that Julian Sand's going to take into every game, obviously we know the weapons they have as well, but then also the pass protection, like I don't need to tell anybody the pass protection was just almost like it was almost hard to fathom. Like the pass protection, a fantastic performance from that offensive line would have still seen them give up a few pressures because that's a really good defensive line, especially on the edge. And it would have still been a fantastic performance. They were flawless. They were perfect in pass protection. So Julian's poise and patience with that protection and those weapons, like my goodness, like they're going to be fine on offense. And I always thought they were going to be okay, but I thought it would take some time. I think it's going to take less time than we thought it was going to. I think they're fine now. Yeah. So
I do too.
I don't know if I thought I was going to come away from this game saying that immediately, but I do now. And look, we talked about this game initially. I kind of leaned Texas, and then I kind of switched back to Ohio State, and I thought it was going to be because that offensive line would be able to run the football, and I was wrong about that. To some degree, obviously, again, we talked about this as the number 1 team in the country, but to some degree, I was wrong about that. But in terms of the offensive line and that pass protection, I don't know how you don't feel fantastic about that, and that offense is
two best pass rushers in the country right there. Yeah. I mean those two together. So that was just phenomenal. I thought for sure they'd give up a few, but I do also want to make sure to highlight that the quarterback has a lot to do with that. And Julian is fantastic at that. He has a really good feel for when to bail, got the speed to get out, and obviously the release helps him. And we've seen quarterback like McCord, who had the opposite of a good feel for that. Guy took sacks when he didn't need to, and made his offensive line look worse. Julian, just the opposite. Great feel for it, has the speed, and I've seen so many times since the game, like, wow, I didn't realize that kid was that fast.
Yeah,
he got the athletic ability to get out on his horse, and he could throw on the run. This team is looking really good now, with 4 weeks before Washington to tweak as we go. And I don't think there's any situation where I could have come out of this feeling any better.
No, I mean, obviously, if I was gonna, conjure up a perfect win, Ohio State would have ran for 175 yards in that game. They didn't. It is what it is. But just in terms of just feel for it coming out of the game, to watch the way that defense played and say, like, yeah, Ohio State's defense is elite again. Like, they can lean on that. And I know the old saying, defense travels. Well, again, in 3 weeks, or I guess it's really 4 weeks when they go to Seattle. And Julian, for all of his patience and his poise, he's going to be making his first road start in a very loud environment, a very great environment for football. So he's going to need that patience and poise again. But to be able to say, like, hey, that defense is going to travel, and I believe Washington's starting a young quarterback as well, right? So
absolutely.
So, good luck to him. He'll have a little bit of film to study on that. I think that's another thing as well, just as an aside, that probably can't be understated as well. Like, the unknown of what Matt Patricia was going to do with this thing and what this was look like that also played into Ohio State's favor as well.
Absolutely.
Not to say that's not going to, be a thing going forward, but that, it just underscores again how quickly they got these guys ready to be able to do what they did on Saturday under Matt Patricia's scheme was just really amazing, and just a huge compliment to the players, to the acumen they have to be able to absorb these things and be able to put that on the field and execute it at a high level. Just tremendous. But yeah, with the defense traveling like that, plenty of ramp up for that offense, man. Like, I'm not one to just, pump up the hype train, but like, Ohio State's a national championship contender is all the best I can say is, like, if there was any doubt that Ohio State can repeat as national champions, there's no doubt about that. Whether they do or not, whether there are any slip ups along the way, we're going to find out together, guys, and I'm looking forward to it. But if there was any doubt about whether Ohio State can repeat as national champions, there is no doubt. And, we'll head down that road together to see if they ultimately do. But they're as good as anybody in college football.
Without a doubt, man, without a doubt. And there is something, in my opinion, to championship DNA and knowing how to win. Yeah. And that was on full display. That coaching staff, even having the confidence to know, like, we don't need to put anything more on this quarterback. We can win like this, and having the confidence and fortitude to execute that probably isn't easy. And they did it, and they were successful. And all the credit to that whole staff. I mean, they're just fantastic. Ryan Day is consistently, I mean, what he's put together, we'll we'll never see it again from another Ohio State coach in a 10 game run like this. It's insane.
It's hard to even get that 10-game run to period together.
Yeah, get that opportunity. Yeah.
So it's great.
It's nuts. It's nuts. All right, Dill. Final thing, I just want to relay to you that there are several folks in the comments the last couple of days who have wanted to announce that while they like Dillon, they're happy that he lost his money. So, Dill, how hard was the hit, buddy?
Not so fast, my friends, because I hedged my bet pretty largely So I didn't lose hardly any money at all. I told you that I was kind of flip-flopping on the game, and I thought Ohio State would win the football game. So I started to hedge my bets there, which came at a perfect time as Texas started to take the lead as a favorite in that game, getting closer to kickoff. So that worked out well. I lost a few dollars, but again, I can't stress enough to anybody, and people might think this is dumb or stupid, and that's fine. I don't give a shit. But I sometimes bet against my favorite teams. It doesn't matter if it's Ohio State or the Red Sox or the Celtics or the Bruins, whatever. Sometimes I bet against them, hoping that I will lose money. I'm buying a win. That I hope that I lose money so that my team will win. So I will do that sometimes. And I've never been more happy to lose money that way. There wasn't a chance in hell that Notre Dame was going to beat Ohio State in the national title last year, but I can promise you, I put money on Notre Dame in that game, just daring it to happen, and I lost money on that game, and I never thought about it again as Ohio State was celebrating a national championship. So, and
the mindset, of course, here is, Dylan, that if the Buckeyes lose or the Bruins or the Celtics, you get a little pick me up because you get a couple of bucks. Yeah. So okay. I've done it too. So I'm with you.
But anyways, to all you guys out there, trust me, you're not hurting my feelings. I'm glad you guys were excited as well. And I promise you, I was as excited as you were to lose my own damn money. So great.
All right, brother. Appreciate you joining me. We will we'll definitely get back together next week, talk about the big test, or maybe we'll talk before it. I don't know, man. It's going to be really interesting going from this to essentially a scrimmage. But nonetheless, we'll be covering it. It'll be a lot of fun to watch some of the younger guys, I'm sure, and let the big dogs get some rest. I'm sure they're pretty beat up, man.
Yeah. Biggest question coming into this week is Grambling going to bring their band to Columbus? So,
yeah. What was last time? I forget who it was. Was it FAU? Didn't end up bringing their band?
It was FAU. Actually, and then Florida. It was Florida. Yeah, it was Florida. Yeah, Florida Atlantic. And they didn't bring their band. And then FIU came, I believe, at some point. And they didn't bring their band as well. Which one's the Rattlers? Which one's?
We're missing the name, but it's something like it's one of. It's not either of those.
Kenny Guyton started against It was against the Rattlers. They were green and orange, some of the most god-awful uniforms you've ever seen in your life. But they didn't bring
beautiful.
Yeah, you didn't bring their band though, and they're supposed to, I think that's actually one of the schools that has maybe the best bands.
Yes,
and they didn't bring them, so
I was excited for them.
Yeah, I hope Grambling brings their band, but other than that, not a lot to talk about. But we'll find something to talk about. That's for sure.
I'm sure we will. All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a good one, buddy. And that our buddy Dylan Davis. We always enjoy when he pops on here and recaps the game with us. And I know you guys were having some fun and wanted to know about that money. So I want to make sure I got that in. That's a pretty sharp move that he pulled there. I think that, I should employ that more often, honestly. If your team loses, you get a couple of bucks. So that is, that's not a bad idea, considering I think that there's a dollar amount most of us would be perfectly acceptable saying, if you had to pay this much money for Ohio State to win this week, how much would it be? Now, probably opponent depends, right? How much are you going to pay for a victory against Grambling? I don't know, but you'd have paid a lot more against Texas for that victory. Anyway, appreciate you guys. That'll conclude today's episode, and I will talk to you soon. Please like it on your way out. Don't forget to subscribe. Juck and Bucks out. Hey, it's Juck. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
Start